The crystal towers of Helios Prime caught the light of 3 suns, throwing rainbow patterns across the smooth metal floors where 12 species gathered to decide humanity's fate. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained peace through careful control. New species were tested, evaluated, and either welcomed or contained. Today they would judge Earth. Ambassador Nora Blake walked between beings that looked like living shadows, others that resembled walking trees, and creatures made of pure energy. Her boots clicked against the floor as she approached the central platform where Council Speaker Aldrin waited. The Lumina looked like a tall human made of golden light, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Humanity seeks recognition as a full member of the galactic community, Blake said, her voice steady despite the weight of representing 8 billion souls. We come in peace, offering our knowledge and friendship. Admiral Roy Chen stood beside her, his military uniform crisp and formal. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the council members whisper among themselves. Dr. Sam Torres clutched her data pad tightly, ready to present humanity's scientific achievements if asked. Council Speaker Aldrin raised one glowing hand for silence. We have observed your species for 50 standard years. Your expansion across 43 star systems shows impressive speed and determination. Blake felt a moment of hope. The council seemed impressed with human progress. However, Aldrin continued, his voice becoming cold, your methods concern us greatly. Your military doctrine prioritizes overwhelming force. Your history shows endless conflicts over resources, territory, and beliefs. Most troubling, you seem incapable of accepting limits. General Cross, the reptilian Soren representative, leaned forward, his scaled face twisted into what might have been a sneer. They destroyed their own planet's climate through greed. They wage wars over invisible lines on maps. How can we trust such creatures with galactic civilization? Dr. Torres stepped forward. We've learned from our mistakes. Human society has evolved. We've solved our environmental problems and unified our world government. After nearly destroying yourselves, hissed Velnara of the insectoid hive species. Her mandibles clicked with disapproval. Evolution through near extinction is not wisdom. It is luck. Blake felt anger rising in her chest but forced it down. Every species makes mistakes while growing. You can't judge us by our past alone. Look at what we've accomplished in just 2 centuries of space travel. That is precisely the problem, Aldrin said. Your pace of expansion worries us. Most species take millennia to reach even 10 star systems. You have claimed over 40 in mere decades. Your appetite for growth seems unlimited. Admiral Chen finally spoke. We explore because it's in our nature. We grow because we must. Our population needs room to breathe and resources to thrive. Isn't that natural for any species? Natural, perhaps, but dangerous, rumbled Thorak, the rock-like Titan representative. His voice sounded like grinding stone. The galaxy has finite resources. Unlimited growth leads to conflict. Blake spread her hands in a gesture of peace. That's why we're here. We want to work within the galactic community. We want to follow the rules and contribute to the common good. The rules, Aldrin repeated slowly. Yes, let us discuss the rules. The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 3 millennia through careful management of younger species. Some are granted full membership immediately. Others must prove themselves over time. And where do we fit? Blake asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Aldrin's golden features hardened. Humanity presents too great a risk for immediate membership. Your emotional volatility, aggressive tendencies, and rapid expansion make you a potential threat to galactic stability. The council chamber fell silent. Blake felt the blood drain from her face. You're rejecting our application? We are implementing protective measures, Aldrin said smoothly. Humanity will be contained within your current 43 systems until you demonstrate the wisdom and restraint necessary for galactic citizenship. Contained? Admiral Chen's voice was dangerously quiet. What exactly does that mean? General Cross answered with obvious satisfaction. It means your expansion ends now. Council fleets will patrol the boundaries of human space. No human vessel will be permitted to leave your designated zone without express permission. Blake felt the room spinning around her. You're talking about a quarantine. A blockade. You're caging an entire species. We prefer to think of it as protective custody, Aldrin said, for your own good and the safety of the galaxy. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has matured, we can reconsider. A few centuries, Dr. Torres gasped. Our colonies need resources from outside our current systems. Our population is still growing. You're condemning billions to stagnation. Better stagnation than the chaos your uncontrolled expansion would bring. Velnara clicked. The council has spoken. The decision is final. Blake stepped forward, her diplomatic training barely keeping her rage in check. By what right do you make this decision? What gives you the authority to imprison an entire species that has done nothing wrong? The right of survival, Aldrin said coldly. The authority of 3,000 years of peace. We have seen species like yours before. Aggressive, expansionist, emotionally driven. They always bring war and destruction. We will not allow that to happen again. Species like us? Chen's hand moved unconsciously toward his sidearm. You mean species that don't bow to your ancient tyranny? The council members stirred uneasily at the implied threat. Guards began moving toward the human delegation. Blake held up a hand to stop Chen from doing something they would all regret. You're making a mistake. Humans don't respond well to cages. We never have. Throughout our history, the more you try to contain us, the harder we fight to break free. Primitive posturing. Aldrin dismissed. Your handful of ships against the combined might of the Galactic Council? You will accept this judgment because you have no choice. Blake stared at the golden being for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made several council members shift uncomfortably. There's always a choice. You're about to learn something about human nature that maybe you should have studied more carefully. And what is that? Aldrin asked with amusement. We're very good at finding ways to break things that seem unbreakable, Blake said, especially when those things are trying to control us. The human delegation was escorted from the chamber under heavy guard. As they walked through the crystal corridors toward their ship, Admiral Chen leaned close to Blake. How long do you think we have before they implement this quarantine? Not long, Blake replied. They'll want to move fast before we can prepare any resistance. Dr. Torres looked back at the towering spires of Helios Prime. They really think they can just lock us away like dangerous animals? Blake's expression hardened as they reached their shuttle. They have no idea what they've just done, but they're going to learn. As the human vessel departed Helios Prime, Council Speaker Aldrin watched from his crystal tower. He felt a strange uneasiness, though he couldn't say why. Humanity had seemed so reasonable during negotiations. Perhaps he had been too harsh, but no, the decision was correct. Every analysis showed that uncontrolled human expansion would lead to galactic war within decades. Better to contain the problem now while it was still manageable. The golden being turned away from the window, dismissing his doubts. The council had maintained peace for 3 millennia. They would maintain it for 3 millennia more. No matter what caged animals might rage against their bars. Behind him, the 3 sons of Helios Prime continued their eternal dance, unaware that their light would soon illuminate the darkness of human wrath. Trade routes that had carried hope and prosperity for decades now ended in walls of alien steel. The council fleets arrived exactly 1 week after the judgment, taking positions at every jump point leading out of human space. What had been 43 thriving systems connected to the galaxy became 43 isolated worlds facing slow death. Captain Lisa Ward gripped the controls of her cargo. Ship knew dawn as she approached the blockade line. Behind her in the cargo bay sat medical supplies desperately needed on Kepler Station, where her daughter Anna worked in the research labs. The colony had been running low on everything since the quarantine began 6 months ago. 3 massive Sorin warships hung in space like metal predators, their weapons trained on her single unarmed vessel. Ward activated her communication system and tried to keep her voice steady. This is Captain Ward of the merchant vessel New Dawn requesting passage to the Kepler system. I'm carrying medical supplies for a research station. The response came immediately, cold and dismissive. Human vessel, you are approaching restricted space. Turn back immediately or face destruction. Ward's jaw tightened. General Cross, I know you can hear me. These supplies are for sick people, including children. They've done nothing wrong. A new voice came over the channel, harsh and grating. Captain Ward, this is General Cross. Your species chose defiance over cooperation. Now you face the consequences of that choice. Defiance? Ward's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. We asked to be treated as equals. How is that defiance? Equals? Cross laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Your species has existed for mere thousands of years. The Council has maintained peace for millions. You are children demanding to sit at the adult table. Ward looked at the image of her daughter on her console, the last message Anna had sent before communications were cut. The girl looked thin and tired, working endless hours to keep the research station running as supplies dwindled. My daughter is dying because you won't let medicine through. How does that serve your peace? Your daughter chose to live in the outer systems, Cross replied without emotion. She can return to Earth if she wishes to survive. The Council is not responsible for poor human decisions. Those poor decisions were made when we thought we were part of a galactic community, Ward shot back, when we believed in cooperation and mutual aid. Belief is a luxury your species can no longer afford, Cross said. Turn back now, or I will demonstrate why the Council maintains its authority through strength. Ward stared at the massive alien ships, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Her single cargo vessel wouldn't last 10 seconds in a fight. But somewhere behind those metal walls was her daughter, and thousands of other humans who had done nothing but try to build a better life among the stars. You want to know something about humans, General? Ward said quietly. We remember everything. Every slight, every cruelty, every time someone with power used it to hurt those who couldn't fight back. And eventually we find a way to make things even. She turned the New Dawn around and began the long journey back to Earth, leaving the medical supplies in her cargo bay to rot, while her daughter and thousands of others slowly died light years away. President David Park sat in the emergency session of the Global Council, watching reports flow in from across human space. The Mars agricultural domes were failing without quantum processors that could only be manufactured in the outer systems. The asteroid mining operations that fed Earth's factories sat idle, because their products couldn't reach their destinations. Entire colonies were beginning to face starvation as the Council's blockade choked the life from humanity's interstellar civilization. The economic damage is catastrophic, reported Finance Minister Sarah. That if this continues for another year, we're looking at the collapse of our space-based infrastructure. Admiral Chen stood at the front of the room, his weathered face grim. I've run every simulation. Our 300 ships against their 10,000. Even with our technological advantages, the math doesn't work. They can absorb losses we can't. So we're supposed to just accept this? Demanded Governor Tom Wilson of the Mars colonies. Watch our people die while we wait for the Council to maybe change their minds in a few centuries. Park rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of 8 billion lives pressing down on his shoulders. What about diplomatic solutions? Other species in the Council who might support us? Ambassador Blake shook her head. I've tried reaching out to every contact we made during the negotiations. The species that might have been sympathetic are too afraid of the Council majority to speak up. We're completely isolated. Dr. Torres had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now she cleared her throat. There might be another option. All eyes turned to the scientist. Park leaned forward. What kind of option? The kind that changes the rules of the game entirely, Torres said carefully. For the past 6 months, I've been leading a classified research project. We call it Project Prometheus. Admiral Chen frowned. I haven't heard of any Project Prometheus. Because it doesn't officially exist, Torres replied. And for good reason. We've been researching weapons and technologies based on uniquely human approaches to problem solving, things the Council species would never develop. What kind of things? Park asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Torres activated a holographic display showing complex technical diagrams. The alien species are old, Mr. President. They think in established patterns, follow rules that have worked for millennia. But humans are different. When we're trapped, we don't just look for existing solutions. We create new ones. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Park studied the diagrams, understanding little of the technical details but recognizing the potential for devastation. These weapons could change the balance of power? They could eliminate the balance of power entirely, Torres said quietly. But Mr. President, once we cross this line, there's no going back. The galaxy will never see us the same way again. Park thought of Captain Ward's report, of the medical supplies rotting in space while human children died. He thought of the Mars colonies slowly starving, of the mining crews stranded in the asteroid belt, of all the dreams and hopes that were withering under the Council's iron fist. The Council made their choice when they decided to cage us like animals. Park said finally, "Show me what Prometheus can do." Torres nodded and began her presentation. As the technical details unfolded, Admiral Chen leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from skepticism to amazement to something approaching fear. My God, Sam, this isn't just about winning a war. This could destabilize the entire galactic order. The galactic order just condemned our species to slow extinction. Park replied coldly. Maybe it's time for a new order. Light years away, General Cross reviewed the daily reports from the blockade fleet. Human attempts to break through had dropped to nearly zero over the past month. A few cargo ships still tried to reach the outer colonies, but they turned back when confronted by superior force. The quarantine was working exactly as planned. The reptilian general allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humans were learning their place in the galactic hierarchy. Soon they would accept their limitations and focus on developing the wisdom necessary for true civilization. His satisfaction faded as he read the latest intelligence reports. Human ships were moving strangely throughout their quarantine zone. Military vessels were being recalled from patrol duties. Scientific installations were operating under unprecedented security protocols. Cross dismissed his concerns. Desperate species often engaged in futile military buildups when facing superior power. The humans would exhaust themselves trying to match Council strength, then finally accept the inevitable. He had no way of knowing that in hidden laboratories throughout human space, scientists were working on problems that had never been solved before, problems that would soon make the Council's overwhelming numerical advantage completely irrelevant. The cage was about to meet the very human trait the Council had most feared, the absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, in chambers carved from the moon's rocky core, humanity's greatest minds worked on solutions that would have horrified their former selves. The research facility had no official name, no government oversight, and no ethical review board. Here, necessity had become the only moral compass. Dr. Torres walked through corridors lined with experimental equipment that hummed with dangerous energies. Her team had grown from 12 scientists to over 300 of the brightest researchers humanity could offer. They came from every field: quantum physics, artificial intelligence, stellar engineering, and more disturbing disciplines that hadn't existed before the quarantine began. Show me the latest results on the neural mapping project, Torres said to Dr. Alex Reed, a neurobiologist who had been studying human brain patterns under extreme stress. Reed pulled up holographic displays showing complex neural networks. We've made a breakthrough. Under extreme pressure, human brains don't just trigger fight-or-flight responses like other species. We have a third option that seems to be unique among known intelligent life, which is pure creative problem-solving. When cornered, humans don't just fight or run. We invent entirely new ways to escape or neutralize threats. Our brains literally rewire themselves to find solutions that didn't exist before. Torres studied the data with growing excitement. Can we replicate this artificially? That's the beautiful part, Reed grinned. We already have. The Prometheus AI system uses human neural patterns as its base architecture. It thinks like a human under pressure, but with quantum processing speeds. In another section of the facility, engineer Maria Santos was explaining the Phantom drive system to a group of military officials. The technology made starships effectively invisible to all known forms of detection by wrapping them in folded spacetime. The Council species could have developed this centuries ago, Santos explained. They have better theoretical physics than we do, but they never thought to try it because the power requirements are supposedly impossible to meet safely. Admiral Chen examined the prototype drive core. But humans found a way? Humans don't accept the word impossible, Santos replied. We found 17 different ways to meet the power requirements. 3 of them would probably be considered war crimes if anyone knew about them. The most disturbing project occupied the deepest level of the facility. Dr. James Wright, formerly a peaceful stellar cartographer, now led the team developing the extinction protocol. His research focused on turning stars themselves into weapons. Every stellar engineer in the galaxy knows the theory, Wright explained to Torres during her inspection. If you disrupt a star's fusion process in just the right way, you can trigger an artificial supernova. But it's considered the ultimate taboo. Even mentioning it gets you banned from most scientific organizations. Torres looked at the complex equations covering every wall of the laboratory. But it's possible. More than possible. We've run successful computer simulations on over 1,000 different star types. We could trigger a chain reaction that would destroy entire sectors of the galaxy. The implications made Torres feel sick. We're not actually going to use this, are we? Wright's expression was grim. That depends on how far the Council is willing to push us. President Park arrived at Europa Station for his first personal inspection of Project Prometheus. What he saw in the depths of the ice-covered moon changed him forever. The research facility had become something between a weapons laboratory and a monument to human ingenuity unleashed from all moral constraints. My God, he whispered as Torres showed him through the various projects. We've become the monsters they said we were. No, Mr. President, Torres replied firmly. We've become the monsters they made us. There's a difference. Ambassador Blake had requested to join the inspection tour. She walked through the facility with growing horror, seeing technologies that violated every principle of civilized warfare. This is insane. If we use these weapons, we'll be proving the Council was right about us. The Council was going to destroy us slowly through starvation and isolation, Admiral Chen replied. At least this way, if we're going to be seen as monsters, we'll be effective monsters. Park studied the holographic displays showing the full scope of human technological development over the past 18 months. Ships that could appear and disappear at will. AI systems that could turn enemy technology against its users. Weapons that could destroy entire star systems. How long before these systems are ready for deployment? He asked. The Phantom Drive is ready now, Torres reported. We've already retrofitted 50 ships. The Fury AI needs another month of testing. The Extinction Protocol, she paused. That's ready too, but Mr. President, once we use it even once, there's no going back. The galaxy will see us as a species willing to commit genocide on a stellar scale. Blake stepped forward. We should try negotiation one more time. Show the Council what we've developed and let them reconsider their position peacefully. With respect, Ambassador, Chen said. They've had 18 months to reconsider. How many more humans have to die while we wait for their wisdom? The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. A junior officer's face appeared on the holographic display, his expression tense. Mr. President, we just received word from the Outer Rim colonies. The Council fleet has destroyed a human hospital ship. The room fell silent. Park felt something cold and final settle in his chest. Details. The ship was carrying medical refugees from dying colonies. Over 3,000 civilians, including children. They broadcast surrender signals and requested safe passage to Earth. General Cross ordered them destroyed anyway. Blake's face went white. 3,000 civilians? Children? General Cross announced that human weakness disgusts him. The officer continued. He said the galaxy would be better off without our kind entirely. Park turned to Torres, and she saw something terrible in his eyes. How long to prepare the first strike? 48 hours, she replied quietly. Then we have 48 hours to become the species the Council feared we always were, Park said. Admiral Chen, prepare the Vengeance for departure. Dr. Torres, activate all Prometheus systems. Blake made one final desperate attempt. Mr. President, please. There has to be another way. Park looked at her with something that might have been pity. Ambassador, they just murdered 3,000 of our people, including children, because they find our weakness disgusting. They've made it clear that our choice is simple. Become the monsters they think we are, or die like the victims they want us to be. He turned back to Torres. I choose monsters. At least monsters can protect their young. As the facility began preparations for humanity's first strike against the Galactic Council, Torres felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. In just 18 months, they had crossed lines that species typically took centuries to approach. They had weaponized human creativity itself, turning their greatest strength into the galaxy's greatest nightmare. But as she thought of the murdered hospital ship, of Captain Ward's daughter dying because medicine was trapped behind alien blockades, of entire colonies slowly starving in the darkness between stars, she found she could live with being a monster. The Council had wanted to see what humans did when caged. They were about to learn that some cages only make the beast inside more dangerous when it finally breaks free. 48 hours later, the Vengeance would depart Europa Station carrying weapons that could end worlds, and somewhere in the depths of space, General Cross would finally understand what it meant to disgust a species that had nothing left to lose. The Helix Nebula had been a symbol of Council power for over 1,000 years. Its swirling gases hid the largest military installation in known space, where 12 species maintained their combined fleet. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the Vengeance, watching the rainbow clouds grow larger on his screens while knowing that hidden among those beautiful colors waited death for his entire species. His ship appeared on no sensors. The phantom drive technology wrapped the Vengeance in folded space-time, making it invisible to everything from basic radar to quantum detection systems. To the massive council fleet ahead, the human vessel simply didn't exist. "Tactical report," Chen ordered quietly. Commander Lisa Park, no relation to the president, studied her displays. 800 council ships in the nebula, 12 different species including General Cross's personal flagship. They're confident in their superiority. No active scanning, minimal shields, Chen nodded. The council had grown comfortable in their dominance. For 3,000 years, no species had been foolish enough to attack their primary stronghold. Today that comfort would cost them everything. Communications, prepare to broadcast on all council frequencies. Weapons, prepare to deploy the Fury system. Engineering, bring the extinction protocol online. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These weren't the same people who had started the war 18 months ago. Every human who had survived the quarantine had been changed by watching their species slowly die, while alien overlords debated their worth. "Admiral," called Dr. Sarah Kim from her science station, "the Fury AI is ready for deployment. Once we release it into their systems, their own technology will turn against them." Chen thought of the hospital ship, of 3,000 civilians murdered because their weakness disgusted a reptilian general. "Do it." The Fury AI shot through space faster than light, riding quantum communication channels into the Council fleet's networks. Within minutes, the most advanced computer virus ever created began its work. Navigation systems started reporting false coordinates. Weapons targeting began selecting friendly ships as enemies. Communication arrays broadcast random signals that jammed all frequencies. The first Council ship to fire was a Lumina vessel, its golden hull gleaming as it launched energy weapons at what it thought was an enemy target. The target was actually a sister ship from the same species. The wounded vessel responded by firing back, and within seconds, 12 different species were shooting at each other in complete confusion. General Cross's voice cut through the chaos on emergency frequencies. "All ships, cease fire. We are under attack by an unknown weapon. Maintain formation and await orders." But the Fury AI had already infected the communication systems. Cross's actual orders came through as gibberish, while false commands spread throughout the fleet, directing ships to fire on their own allies. Chen activated his communication system and broadcast across all Council frequencies. His voice reached every ship in the nebula, calm and clear despite the chaos he had created. "Council fleet, this is Admiral Roy Chen of the Human Defense Force. You wanted to see what humans do when caged like animals. This is your answer." The alien crews struggled to regain control of their ships while their own technology betrayed them. Weapons that had been designed to destroy human colonies now turned on their creators. Navigation systems that had enforced the quarantine now guided ships into deadly collisions. "You had the entire galaxy to share," Chen continued his broadcast. "Instead, you chose to imprison an entire species because we refused to bow to your ancient tyranny. Now you'll learn what happens when you underestimate human ingenuity." On Cross's flagship, the reptilian general finally managed to isolate his communication systems from the viral infection. His scaled face twisted with rage as he realized the scope of the human attack. "Impossible," he hissed to his bridge crew. "No single ship could penetrate our defenses. Our sensors show nothing but empty space." His tactical officer, a young Soran named Vex, pointed at his displays with a clawed hand. "General, the attack isn't coming from outside. It's already inside our systems. Our own computers are fighting against us." Cross stared at the chaos surrounding his fleet. Hundreds of ships were either damaged or completely disabled. The greatest military force in galactic history was tearing itself apart, and he couldn't even see the enemy that had caused it. "Human vessel," he broadcast on emergency frequencies, "show yourself. Fight with honor instead of hiding behind tricks and deception." Chen's laugh echoed through the Council fleet. "Honor? Like the honor you showed when you murdered 3,000 civilian refugees? Like the honor of starving entire colonies because they dared to ask for freedom?" The human admiral's voice turned cold as the space between stars. "General Cross, you wanted to teach my species about limits. Allow me to return the favor. The Vengeance's most terrible weapon came online. The extinction protocol locked onto the Helix system's primary star, a massive blue giant that had burned for millions of years. Quantum manipulators shot through space at impossible speeds, penetrating the star's core and beginning to disrupt the delicate fusion processes that kept it stable. "What are you doing?" Cross demanded, but his instruments were already showing the answer. The star was beginning to collapse, its fusion core destabilizing as exotic particles flooded its nuclear heart. Chen's final broadcast reached every surviving ship in the fleet. "I'm giving you a choice, General. Order all Council forces to withdraw permanently from human space or watch your fleet burn in the fire of a dying star." The tactical displays showed the star's collapse accelerating. In less than an hour, it would explode with the force of a supernova, sterilizing everything within 20 light-years. The Council fleet had minutes to escape, not hours. Most of the alien commanders immediately began emergency jump procedures, their ships fleeing the dying system in panic. But Cross refused to retreat. His flagship and 36 loyal vessels remained in formation, weapons trained on empty space where they hoped the human ship might be hiding. "I will not submit to terrorist demands," Cross broadcast defiantly. "The Council has maintained order for 3,000 years. We will not be intimidated by upstart primates with stolen technology." His bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. The star was visibly changing color as its core temperature spiked beyond sustainable levels. Energy readings showed the countdown to explosion in real time. "General," Vex said quietly, "perhaps we should consider tactical withdrawal. We can return with reinforcements." Cross struck his subordinate with a scaled fist, sending the younger Soran sprawling. "Cowards. All of you. The moment we retreat from human demands is the moment Council authority dies throughout the galaxy." Chen watched the reptilian general's flagship hold position, while the star behind it grew brighter and more unstable. "Admiral," Commander Park reported, 37 Council ships are maintaining position with Cross. The rest have jumped to safety." "Then they've made their choice," Chen replied. "Prepare to jump. Our work here is finished." The star exploded with the force of 10 billion nuclear weapons, its death scream visible across half the galaxy. General Cross and his loyal fleet vanished in an instant, consumed by fires hot enough to forge new elements. The Helix Nebula became an expanding sphere of superheated plasma that would sterilize 7 star systems before it finally cooled. The Vengeance jumped to safety just as the shockwave reached their position. Chen stood on his bridge, watching the greatest military installation in galactic history burn in the light of an artificial supernova. "Message to Earth," he ordered. "First strike successful. Council primary fleet destroyed. Helix system eliminated. Human space is no longer under blockade." As reports of the attack spread throughout the galaxy, panic began to spread among the Council species. The humans had done the impossible. They had destroyed the Council's strongest fleet using a single ship that couldn't even be detected. But more terrifying than their technology was their willingness to use it. They had triggered a supernova, destroying entire star systems, just to make a point about their refusal to accept limits. Council Speaker Aldrin received the reports in his crystal tower above Helios Prime. For the first time in his 3,000-year life, the Golden Being felt something approaching fear. The humans weren't fighting to win territory or resources. They were fighting to send a message that would echo across the galaxy for millennia. Never cage a species that would rather burn down the universe than accept chains. The war for humanity's freedom had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of the Helix system's destruction spread across the galaxy, faster than the expanding supernova shockwave. In chambers of crystal and metal, in underwater cities and orbital platforms, 12 species struggled to comprehend what humanity had done. They had not merely won a battle, they had announced their willingness to burn down the galaxy itself, rather than accept imprisonment. On the ocean world of Depth Prime, the aquatic council members floated in their vast chambers, while emergency sessions debated humanity's ultimatum. Ambassador Coral of the Deep Swimmers spoke with trembling voice patterns that rippled through the water around her. The humans destroyed 7 inhabited star systems to eliminate 1 fleet. Billions of lives lost in an instant. We cannot continue this path toward mutual extinction. But in the crystal spires of Resonance Prime, the silicon-based crystalline collective sang a different tune. Their harmonic voices rang with fear and fury as they demanded immediate retaliation. The flesh creatures have violated the fundamental laws of civilized warfare. They must be eliminated before their madness spreads. The Galactic Council fractured along lines that had remained stable for millennia. 6 species, led by the depth swimmers and the peaceful resonance, voted for immediate ceasefire negotiations. They would offer humanity full citizenship, territorial rights, and reparations in exchange for ending the hostilities. But the other 6 species, dominated by the militaristic Sorans and the proud Lumina, declared humanity a cancer that had to be cut from the galaxy before it killed everything else. They formed the Purification Alliance, dedicated to the complete extermination of the human species. Council Speaker Aldrin found himself caught between 2 impossible choices: negotiate with terrorists who had proven they would commit genocide to achieve their goals, or wage war against a species that seemed capable of destroying the galaxy itself out of spite. Humanity's response came within days of the Council split. Phantom ships materialized simultaneously throughout the galaxy, appearing from what seemed like empty space around every major Council installation. But these attacks followed a pattern that chilled alien observers more than random destruction would have. The humans targeted only military bases, government centers, and symbols of Council authority. Civilian populations were left completely untouched. Dr. Torres monitored the coordinated assault from Europa Station, watching as decades of Council infrastructure crumbled under precise human strikes. "They're not trying to conquer territory," she observed to President Park during their secure communication. "They're systematically dismantling the Council's ability to govern." On the Saran homeworld, 3 human ships appeared in orbit around the capital city. The planetary defense grid, one of the most advanced in the galaxy, turned its weapons on the intruders only to have every targeting system fail simultaneously. The Fury AI had already infected their networks, turning their own defenses into useless scrap metal. The human ships didn't fire on the city below. Instead, they broadcast a simple message: "Your military leadership chose to murder our children. Today we remove your ability to threaten anyone else's children." Quantum torpedoes struck the orbital command stations with surgical precision. The planetary government buildings vanished in controlled explosions that left surrounding civilian areas completely undamaged. Within hours, the Saran capital went from the seat of an interstellar empire to a collection of confused civilians wondering where their leaders had gone. Similar scenes played out across Purification Alliance worlds. The Lumina's crystal palaces shattered under resonance weapons designed specifically to exploit their silicon-based architecture. The Titan homeworld watched its mountain-sized government complexes collapse as human engineering teams demonstrated their mastery of controlled demolition on a geological scale. But the most disturbing aspect of the human assault wasn't its precision. It was their rate of adaptation. Every new Council weapon was countered within days of its first use. Every tactical innovation was met with an even more devastating human response. Admiral Chen coordinated the attacks from his flagship, now one of over 200 phantom vessels that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. His tactical displays showed the real-time collapse of Council military infrastructure across dozens of star systems. "They're learning to fear us," Commander Park reported. "Intelligence indicates that several minor species are requesting human protection from Council retaliation." Chen nodded grimly. Fear was a weapon, but it was also a responsibility. "Make sure our people understand the rules of engagement. We target only legitimate military and government installations. No civilian casualties. We're not becoming the monsters they said we were." But the distinction between military and civilian targets was becoming harder to maintain as the war escalated. The Purification Alliance began embedding their command structures within civilian populations, using schools and hospitals as shields for their operations. The breaking point came when Soran forces took over an orphanage on the neutral world of Haven, converting it into a military command post while keeping the children inside as human shields. When Admiral Chen's fleet arrived to destroy the facility, they faced an impossible choice. Chen stood on his bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed 300 alien children trapped inside a legitimate military target. His weapons officer waited for orders while the seconds ticked away toward their scheduled attack window. "Sir," Commander Park said quietly, "the Sorans are broadcasting the children's images across all frequencies. They want the galaxy to see us choose between our mission and innocent lives." Chen felt the weight of humanity's future pressing down on his shoulders. If he attacked, the galaxy would see humans as child killers. If he retreated, every subsequent military target would be surrounded by civilian shields. Weapons, prepare quantum drill charges, Chen ordered. Engineering, I need pinpoint accuracy down to the centimeter. We're going to thread the needle. The attack that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. Human quantum drills burrowed through the orphanage's military sections with impossible precision, destroying weapons and communication equipment while leaving the children's areas completely untouched. When Council reinforcements arrived, they found 300 terrified but unharmed alien children sitting in rooms where the military equipment had simply vanished. The message was clear. Human weapons were so advanced that they could pick apart military targets on a molecular level without harming nearby civilians. The Purification Alliance's shield tactics had become completely useless, but the war was changing humanity too. Dr. Torres watched the casualty reports with growing concern, not for the alien dead, but for what the conflict was doing to human souls. Her researchers worked 18-hour days developing new weapons of unimaginable destructive power. Engineers who had once built hospitals now designed systems for turning planets into weapons. We're becoming something different, she told Ambassador Blake during one of their increasingly rare conversations. Something that can wage war on a galactic scale without flinching. Blake looked older than her years, worn down by months of impossible decisions. Maybe that's what we need to become. The old humanity tried to join the galactic community peacefully. Look where it got us. The transformation was most visible in the newest generation of human soldiers. Young people who had grown up under the quarantine, who had watched their friends and family slowly die while alien powers debated their worth. They fought with a cold efficiency that would have horrified their parents. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, barely 20 years old, commanded a squadron of phantom fighters that had destroyed over 50 Council installations. When asked by a war correspondent how she felt about the alien casualties, her response became famous throughout human space. I feel the same way about dead Council soldiers that General Cross felt about our murdered children. Nothing at all. The galactic media began calling them the lost generation, humans who had learned to wage war before they learned to make peace. They were brilliant, ruthless, and completely without mercy for the species that had caged their civilization. As the war entered its second year, the balance of power shifted decisively toward humanity. Council fleets could no longer operate safely anywhere in the galaxy. Their governments ruled only from hidden bunkers while human ships patrolled the space lanes with impunity. But the humans weren't satisfied with military victory. They had learned from their enemies' mistakes. Instead of trying to rule conquered territory, they systematically destroyed every symbol of Council authority while leaving local populations to govern themselves. The result was chaos on a galactic scale. Thousands of species that had lived under Council protection for millennia suddenly found themselves free to pursue their own destinies. Some celebrated their liberation. Others begged for the return of the stability they had known under alien rule. Council Speaker Aldrin watched the disintegration of his civilization from the safety of Helios Prime, protected by the largest remaining Council fleet. His golden features had dimmed with exhaustion as he processed reports of humanity's latest strategic innovations. They're not just winning the war, he told his advisors. They're rewriting the fundamental rules of galactic civilization. Everything we built over 3 millennia is crumbling. His chief strategist, an ancient Lumina named Chorus, sang a mournful harmony. Perhaps we underestimated their capacity for growth. They adapt faster than any species we've encountered. Aldrin activated a communication link to Admiral Chen, broadcasting on frequencies he hoped the humans would monitor. Admiral Chen, this is Council Speaker Aldrin. I request immediate negotiations to end this conflict before it destroys what remains of galactic civilization. The response came within hours, not from Chen but from President Park himself. The human leader's face appeared on Aldrin's screens, older and harder than during their first meeting years ago. Council Speaker Aldrin, humanity is prepared to discuss terms, but understand that we are no longer the species seeking your approval. We are the power that will determine the galaxy's future. You will accept our conditions or face the consequences of continued resistance. Aldrin stared at the human leader, seeing in his eyes the transformation that the quarantine had wrought. These weren't the same eager explorers who had once sought galactic citizenship. They had become something new, something that viewed the old order as an obstacle to be removed rather than a system to join. "What are your terms?" Aldrin asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Park's smile was cold as starlight. "Complete dissolution of the Galactic Council, withdrawal of all Council forces to their home systems, recognition of humanity as the new arbiters of galactic law, and war crimes trials for every Council leader who supported the quarantine." The Golden Being felt the last of his species' ancient pride crumble. "And if we refuse? Then we continue this war until every Council world burns in the light of dying stars," Park replied without hesitation. "The choice is yours, Speaker Aldrin. Surrender now, or watch us demonstrate why the galaxy was right to fear what humans become when you push us too far." As the communication ended, Aldrin realized that the Council's greatest fear had come true. They had created exactly the monster they had tried to prevent, and now that monster was strong enough to devour them all. The crystal spires of Helios Prime had stood for 3,000 years as symbols of galactic order and peace. Now they trembled as the largest space battle in recorded history raged in the gas giant's swirling atmosphere. Council Speaker Aldrin watched from his command center as the combined fleets of 6 species made their final, desperate stand against humanity's phantom armada. The remaining Council forces had gathered everything they could find. Ancient dreadnoughts pulled from museum displays, experimental prototype vessels never meant for combat, even converted civilian ships pressed into military service. Over 8,000 vessels surrounded Helios Prime in a defensive formation that had once seemed absolutely impregnable. Admiral Chen's fleet numbered only 300 ships, but they moved through space like deadly ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will while Council weapons fired uselessly at empty space. The Phantom Drive technology had evolved far beyond its original design, allowing human vessels to phase in and out of normal space-time with impossible precision. "Council fleets are maintaining defensive positions," reported Commander Park from her tactical station. "They're not even trying to engage us directly anymore." Chen nodded grimly. The aliens had learned that traditional space combat was useless against human technology. But they still had one card left to play, and Chen suspected they were desperate enough to use it. His suspicions proved correct when massive energy signatures began appearing throughout the Helios system. Ancient weapons that predated the Galactic Council were coming online. Technology so dangerous that entire civilizations had agreed to never use them again. The first reality bender activated near Helios Prime's largest moon, twisting space-time itself into impossible geometries. Gravity reversed direction in random patches of space, sending debris flying in all directions, while human ships struggled to maintain formation. "They're using the forbidden arsenal," Dr. Torres reported from her science station aboard the flagship. "Weapons that were banned after the Great Purge 2 million years ago." A second ancient weapon fired from the gas giant's core, sending waves of exotic energy that began unraveling matter at the atomic level. Human ships caught in the beam simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across vast distances as their molecular bonds dissolved. Chen felt ice in his veins as he realized the Council's final strategy. They weren't trying to win anymore. They were trying to destroy so much of local spacetime that both fleets would be annihilated together. "They'd rather commit mutual suicide than surrender," he said quietly. "All ships prepare for emergency jump. We're withdrawing to minimum safe distance." But President Park's voice cut through the communication channels before Chen could give the retreat order. "Negative, Admiral. We don't retreat. Not anymore. Activate the extinction protocol. Full galactic implementation." Chen felt his blood turn to ice water. "Mr. President, that will trigger supernovas throughout Council space. We're talking about potential collapse of the galaxy's entire stellar structure. The Council just activated weapons that could unravel reality itself." Park replied coldly. "They've made their choice. Now we make ours." Throughout human space, hidden installations that had been built in the deepest secrecy came online simultaneously. The extinction protocol had evolved far beyond its original design. Instead of targeting individual stars, the new system could trigger cascading supernova reactions that would spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Torres watched the countdown begin on her instruments and felt the weight of history crushing down on her shoulders. "Admiral, once this starts, we can't stop it. The chain reactions will continue until they burn out naturally. We could be looking at the death of galactic civilization itself." Chen stared at the tactical display. showing ancient council weapons tearing holes in reality, while human technology prepared to turn every star in the galaxy into a weapon. Two species locked in a death spiral that could destroy everything they claimed to be protecting. "Sir," Commander Park reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Council Speaker Aldrin." The golden alien's image appeared on the main screen, and Chen was shocked by how much the being had changed. Aldrin's radiant features had dimmed to a pale glow, and his voice carried the weight of absolute defeat. "Admiral Chen, President Park, I am speaking for what remains of the Galactic Council. We surrender unconditionally. Please stop the extinction protocol before it destroys us all." President Park's face appeared on a split screen, his expression harder than Chen had ever seen it. "You've surrendered before, Speaker Aldrin. Then you activated weapons that could destroy reality itself. Why should we trust you now?" "Because we're all dead if you don't," Aldrin replied with desperate honesty. "Our ancient weapons are destabilizing local spacetime. Your extinction protocol will cascade through hyperspace and destroy every star in the galaxy. We'll all be extinct within centuries, along with every other species that calls this galaxy home." The human president was quiet for a long moment, and Chen could see the terrible calculation playing out behind his eyes. "The terms are non-negotiable, Speaker. Complete dissolution of the Council. War crimes trials for everyone involved in the quarantine. Humanity assumes authority over galactic law and order." "Agreed," Aldrin said immediately. "Anything you demand. Just please stop the chain reaction before it's too late." Dr. Torres was frantically working at her science station, running calculations on the expanding supernova cascade. "Mr. President, the stellar chain reactions are accelerating. If we don't shut down the protocol in the next few minutes, it may be physically impossible to stop." President Park stared at the tactical displays showing the scope of destruction his species had unleashed. Throughout Council space, stars were beginning to collapse as exotic particles flooded their cores. Entire sectors would be uninhabitable for millions of years. "Dr. Torres," he said quietly, "what are the long-term consequences if we continue?" Torres looked up from her calculations with haunted eyes. "Complete galactic ecosystem collapse within 3 centuries. Every star system will become uninhabitable. We'll rule over an empire of dead worlds." The silence on the bridge stretched for eternal seconds as humanity's leaders faced the ultimate choice. They could continue their campaign and achieve total victory over the species that had imprisoned them. But the price would be the death of everything they claimed to be fighting for. Admiral Chen made the decision for all of them. "All ships, emergency shutdown of extinction protocol systems. Dr. Torres, transmit the abort codes immediately." "Sir, that's not your call to make," President Park said sharply. Chen turned to face the screen showing his president, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had seen too much death. "With respect, Mr. President, this is exactly my call to make. You ordered me to protect humanity. I can't do that if there's no galaxy left for us to live in." The abort codes transmitted across human space, shutting down the extinction protocol just as the cascading reactions reached critical mass. Throughout Council territory, artificial supernovas flickered and died, leaving behind systems scarred by stellar fire but still capable of supporting life. The ancient Council weapons powered down as well, their reality-warping effects gradually stabilizing back to normal spacetime. The immediate threat of mutual annihilation had passed, but the galaxy would bear the scars of this conflict for millions of years. Council Speaker Aldrin's image reappeared on the communication screen, his golden features showing something that might have been relief. "Admiral Chen, President Park, on behalf of what remains of the Galactic Council, I formally surrender all authority to the Human Defense Force. We place ourselves at your mercy." President Park was quiet for a long time, studying the destruction visible on every tactical display. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weariness that hadn't been there at the beginning of the war. "The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved. All member species will withdraw their forces to their home systems and await instructions from the new galactic government. War crimes trials will begin immediately for those responsible for the quarantine." He paused, looking directly at Aldrin. "But understand this, Speaker. Humanity didn't fight this war to become the new tyrants. We fought it to make sure no species ever again has the power to cage another entire civilization." Chen stepped forward. "The galaxy will be governed by principles of cooperation and mutual respect. Any species that threatens others will face the same response the Council received. We've proven we're willing to burn down everything to protect freedom. Don't make us prove it again." As the great fleets began to disperse, carrying news of humanity's victory to every corner of the galaxy, Dr. Torres completed her damage assessment. 17 star systems had been sterilized by artificial supernovas. Hundreds of billions had died in the cascading conflicts. The galactic economy would take centuries to recover. But something new was being born from the ashes of the old order. Species that had lived under council authority for millennia were discovering what it meant to govern themselves. Trade routes were being re-established based on mutual benefit, rather than enforced hierarchy. The rigid caste system that had defined galactic civilization was crumbling. Ambassador Blake, who had opposed the war from the beginning, found herself appointed as humanity's first galactic coordinator. Her job was to help guide the transition from council rule to the new Federation of Free Species. "You realize the irony, don't you?" she said to President Park during their final meeting before she left for her new assignment. "The council was right about us. We did change the galaxy forever." Park looked older than his years, worn down by the weight of decisions that had cost billions of lives. They were right about the change. They were wrong about everything else. Sometimes the old order has to die for something better to be born. And if we become the same kind of tyrants they were, then some other young species will rise up and burn us down too, Park replied with grim honesty. "That's the price of power, Ambassador. You hold it only as long as you deserve it." As Blake's ship departed Earth orbit, carrying her toward a galaxy forever changed by human determination, she looked back at the blue world that had produced both the greatest weapons of mass destruction ever devised, and the wisdom to refrain from using them when victory was within reach. The galaxy would remember this war for millions of years. They would remember the species that had been caged and chosen to break free rather than accept chains. They would remember the terrible price of underestimating those who refused to accept limits. But most of all, they would remember that in the end humanity had chosen mercy over vengeance, cooperation over domination, and hope over the easy satisfaction of total victory. The stars themselves bore witness to the birth of a new age, one written in the light of dying suns and forged in the fires of human determination. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of caging a species that would rather burn down the universe than accept slavery. And in the darkness between stars, the echo of an ancient warning whispered across the void. Never underestimate a species that dreams of touching the sky, for they will find a way to bring down the heavens themselves rather than accept earthly chains.